Big 12 football is back this weekend in Dublin, Ireland. Who will win and how will it affect your Big 12 team? This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. We will start Kansas State, Iowa State, Farmageddon, and it's overseas. Who wins the game? What will the final score be, and how will it all play out then? ESPN thought it was slick. They just added the entire SEC into the top 20 in FPI just to spite the Big 12. How do they get away with this? And how does the college football playoff allow them to do it? Then West Virginia will shock this conference, I think, because of quarterback play and the quarterback competition they have right now. TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction joins the show. We'll break all of that down. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. TJ, let's talk week 0. It is Kansas State, Iowa State, Farmageddon in Dublin.
An incredible rivalry happening in one of the most special ways possible to literally kick off the college football season. Kansas State, an early favorite in this and has been a favorite the whole time, 3 points, but you're talking a coin flip type of game. Avery Johnson, Rocco, this is fun. This is exactly what you want, like a Big 12 premiere. Before we even maybe dive into the matchup itself, thoughts on just the Big 12 is center stage on Saturday.
Yeah, the Big 12 being a center stage is awesome for the Big 12. It really does stink for Kansas State and Iowa State in a lot of ways, though. And that's kind of how I've ebbed and flowed on my thoughts of this entire matchup is if you lose, and Florida State kind of saw this last season, if you lose in Dublin, Ireland, you now have, and you've spent this week and a half, 2 weeks, now year and a half of planning that you've all put into this matchup. You just lost. You gave up a ton of practice time and a home game and a conference game that was close for your school to drive there, fan base to drive there. And now that you've given that up, you've lost. You got to go back to the States, play a fairly tough non-conference slate, get into Big 12 play. It's hard to reset. It's hard to get back into business. That's going to be the reality for one of either Iowa State or Kansas State. In my opinion, it is Iowa State, who still has Iowa on the docket. South Dakota is a top five FCS school. They'll beat them. They'll be pushed. Arkansas State is a game in Jonesboro. Arkansas State's not going to beat Iowa State, but it's going to suck to have to go to Jonesboro and make a trip to a Sun Belt opponent this year for the Cyclones. That is the negative of being in Ireland for these two teams. However, the positive, the entire world gets to watch Kansas State. They get to watch Avery Johnson and Rocco Becht, one of the most underrated quarterback matchups in the country. A lot of people are still not buying the hype on Becht, who was a 3,500-yard passer last season. And yeah, he had 2 NFL caliber wide receivers, 2 of the better receivers in this draft. But still, Xavier Townson, they picked him up in the portal out of UCF. They're going to be just fine in that category. And they're going to be a team that still relies on letting him throw the football. If you look at Pick 6 previews, they tell you that Kansas State is tied for 5th in the Big 12, and Iowa State is 7th in the conference going into this season. This is an Iowa State school that won 10-plus games for the first time ever last year. They ended up going 11-3 on their slate, and a Kansas State team that felt like it kind of underachieved. And Chris Kleiman's been asked about, do you feel like you've underachieved these last couple seasons? He said, look, we won 9 games last year. We've won 8 games every year since 2021. Most schools, even in the SEC, would kill for that. Arkansas, with their budget, A&M, they would kill for that. Kansas State did that. We're walking into a game that's going to display 2 of the Big 12's best. And on top of that, TJ, this is a rivalry matchup. These 2 schools hate each other in the coolest way ever. Why do they hate each other? We don't really know. It's just they both do the corn and the grain and the farm. And I keep asking people, why is there this seething thought about the other? What is it that really makes you not like the other? And people are like, I don't know. We just played them so many times for so long, and they all have this one memory of when so-and-so beat so-and-so. And now, especially under Matt Campbell and the success that they've had, Iowa State is really in a good spot to be solid this year if they're escaping Ireland with a win against Kansas State. It could be another 10-win season. It's just that's a big if for me in a game that means so much to both these schools, not just as a standalone, but also as a rivalry.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. The biggest thing I thought was the exact opposite. When Florida State lost to Georgia Tech, I was able to, in my mind, now it quickly got disproven on Labor Day and then through the rest of the year, but in my mind, I was able to say, listen, maybe it was just the pomp and circumstance of the game. Maybe it was just all the hype from last year. You had the playoff snub, you had everything else, you had fallen short of expectation, whatever. We'll be able to flush that. So I'm going, you went kind of negative. I'll go ultra positive for the loser of this game. You do have the opportunity, and both these guys are coached by super solid leaders and super solid men that I have a lot of confidence in. And I know how they're going to spin it. I already know what listen, we're leaving this loss in Dublin. Like, I can already hear that in whoever the post-game video comes out of the losing coach in the locker room. And that's easier said than done for sure. I do think being able to reset and say, hey, we are leaving this here and we're going to go back, play the rest of our non-con, get into Big 12 play, which is what's most important, clearly. Obviously, this is being a Big 12 game, but let's get through our non-con, let's get through Big 12 play and really make our mark in the States. Much easier said than done, but that's the talking point coming out of the game for one of these two teams. It would be very easy to say that whichever quarterback plays better on Saturday is going to win this game. You've got a big time, like you just mentioned, one of the best quarterback matchups in the country any week when you look at this game. So I don't know that we need to spend a ton of time on, well, yeah, if Avery plays better, if Rocco plays better, their team's likely going to win. Where's the matchup in the trenches here, right? Where games are won and lost, and I don't want to be so cliche with that, but where's the advantage on both sides of the line of scrimmage in this?
Yeah, let's take a look first at the defense. This is how it's going to be played by Iowa State. They want to stop the rush. They want to stop Dylan Edwards. They want to make sure that Kansas State cannot establish that ground and pound, and it makes a lot of sense. Why? Last year, the Cyclones, number one in the country in rushing defense. They were a stalwart on that side of the ball, and if they want to win this game, it's going to have to come from that once again. They're going to have to stop the rush once again. Their defensive line was elite last season. They needed to build up their offensive line. Talking to Nick Maravets about the way that they're going to look this season is one thing that has been a staple of my offseason, trying to get more information on how Iowa State has bolstered that offensive line. But the D-line, the defense in that category is not where I'm worried. They were this is an Iowa State defense that has to focus on that. And this is a Kansas State offense that has to focus on that, rushing the football. And then Kansas State's defense was 28th in the nation, 119 yards per game against that rush. So it's like an immovable object, unstoppable force, whatever that saying is, that's where it's going to be tough this year. Can Iowa State actually stop the run against Kansas State with what they've got coming back? And can Kansas State establish the run with one of the best rushing offense in the country last season, 11th in the nation, running the football? And can Iowa State establish the run with Abu Sama? We talked a lot last year about Carson Hansen as well. Can they be the best rushing attack in the Big 12? I mean, as much as you're like, hey, trenches, we got two good quarterbacks, two good running back rooms, and I don't know where to go from there. That's the difference. Might just be the fact that Kansas State has a slightly better, in my opinion, offensive line, and that Iowa State is not as elite in the quarterback category, despite having a very good quarterback. And again, Pick Six Previews has this game separated by about a field goal in favor of Kansas State, and they say that Kansas State has the fourth best offensive line in the Big 12. Iowa State has the sixth best offensive line, and this year, due to a couple guys moving around, they have Iowa State as the 10th best defensive line, Kansas State as the second best defensive line. When you hodgepodge those together, it feels like Kansas State has the advantage in the trenches. In my opinion, not by a ton, but still by enough to win.
What about X factors or weapons? Any portal additions that you think could maybe make a big impact here? We'll talk skill positions for both teams for a moment.
Yeah, if it's going to be via the portal, it's going to be how Iowa State utilizes not just its offensive line, as I mentioned, but also the transfer portal duo of Chase Sell coming over from East Carolina, 4-star transfer, number 7 overall wide receiver, and then Xavier Townson at UCF. The Xavier Townson that I know is very good at football. Most of the country would see that name and think, oh, wasn't he good a couple of years ago and maybe he's washed? I don't think that is the case. I believe that he's going to come in and be a stalwart for Iowa State this season. I'm going to spend a lot of time on the Cyclones because I just gave you a lot about the Wildcats. That's who I'm looking at for Iowa State. Jared Hufford, their starting center last year. Jalen Travis, their left tackle, both left early for the NFL draft as well. So other three starters are back, but you're still replacing two of your best guy to the offensive line, you now have to lean a little bit more on your skill positions. Townsend is going to be one of the guys that I expect to be an X factor for Iowa State if they actually do come out and win the game in Dublin. Now, it's weird to say on Saturday, but this Saturday, if they win the game, because that's how close we are to college football.
Is there a coaching advantage in this game? Both two very well-respected coaches in the Big 12. It feels like you're slighting one if you pick the other, but thoughts around that?
You got a coach who's been to 2 Big 12 championships in his 10-year stretch, which honestly is pretty good in a conference that was dominated by Oklahoma for so long. And then a coach in Chris Kleiman that has revived Kansas State. You know, when Bill Snyder left, it was, wow, can anybody not name Bill Snyder coach at this school ever in general? And Chris Kleiman has been that guy. I remember in 2021, that weird COVID season, or 2020, the fall of 2020, it was what it was, is Chris Kleiman comes into Waco, the 7-2 Baylor Bears upset Kansas State, and they're calling for his head. They wanted him fired. Now he's won a Big 12 championship against TCU, one of the most elite teams the Big 12 has ever seen. And so you're like, wow, well, shoot, that's kind of a wash. They're both the same guy. They're both the old school football coach at the team in the Midwest that really wants to ground and pound and hit you in the mouth and do things the right way. I'm going to go with a 1-to-1. They both went to schools that are very hard to win at, schools that are very hard to coach at, and have put their teams in a position to be at the top of the Big 12. I'm saying no coaching advantage. I respect them equally.
Let's make a prediction on this one. What you got? I won't even draw this question out.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kansas State in this game. Again, the trenches are a little bit different. What Iowa State has to replace defensively, namely in their defensive trenches, give Kansas State and their elite rushing attack an advantage. Kansas State's going to win by a final of, I think we'll see this one get up into the 20s, 28-20. 28-24 feels right to me. That's a very clean score, but it feels right to me. Kansas State finishes off Iowa State with a win.
Yeah, I'm going to go 30-27. Same thing. Kansas State just, I guess, is that a push? Maybe by the half a point. But yeah, so I'll go Kansas State as well in this one.
Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Monarch Money is exactly where I go as a 24-year-old who has no idea what I'm doing with my money. I'll go and my money is gone. Most people can't name all the financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401k, properties, investments. I don't even know what those are myself. Monarch Money has helped do the heavy lifting for me. Link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data, visuals, and get smart categorization of your spending. Finally, feel in control of your money without even touching a spreadsheet. Thank goodness. It makes it simple to review my finances with even my parents. I'm like, hey, dad, dog, you were a New York Life guy for a little bit. What does this look like? It's easy. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com. All you got to do is use that code LOCKEDON. College. Today's show is also brought to you by OpenPhone. OpenPhone has been a game changer. I'm a small business owner myself. If you're running a business, every missed call is left on the table. When somebody wants to call toll marketing and they don't get me, if the first person didn't answer, you usually don't wait. You've moved on. OpenPhone helps you. You never miss an opportunity. Number one business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communication. You juggle 2 phones? No longer. There's not a shared inbox where you're like, who's handling this? And the AI agent handles after-hour calls. See why over 60,000 businesses trust OpenPhone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedon. openphone.com/lockedoncollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. openphone.com/lockedoncollege.
We haven't even started the season. We're 4 days away. And is the SEC already, is ESPN already working the magic to make sure that what happens to them last year, the fact that they only got the second most teams in the playoff instead of the first, it snubbed, 9-3 team snubbed, which is hilarious to think about as an FSU fan, that doesn't happen again to one of their precious members, Danny Cannell, who, love or hate him, which as an FSU guy and the way that he trolls the SEC, I am fully in the Danny Cannell camp. It was pointed out to him by one of these aggregating accounts on Twitter that ESPN's FPI has magically moved a whole bunch of SEC teams from like 20s and mid-teens, lower teens, up into like the 11, 12 range. They've dropped Clemson drastically, which I'm very high on Clemson this year. I think Cade Klubnik is QB1. I think they're going to go to the playoff. I think they're going to at least win a playoff game there. They've dropped Big 12 teams. They're starting this already with FPI, which I've never thought FPI was the end-all be-all, but it is a metric that the committee puts on the screen when they put these polls together at the end of the year. They're trying their very best to stack the deck early, and the top 10 is loaded with SEC teams, some Big Ten teams too, for sure, your powers that you would recognize. And then all the ACC Big 12 teams are getting dropped, and no football has been played. Nothing has happened since the spring. Shout out to Canal, shout out to the aggregating site, which I don't even know what it was, that found this. But yeah, it's starting early, right? We haven't even kicked off in Dublin, and it's already started.
This applies across the board. It even applies to some of the Big 12 schools who are ticked off that now BYU has moved up in the FPI. And according to ESPN, BYU is in the Big 12 championship game against Kansas State. And I'm a little ticked off by that. I was supposed to be the genius who had BYU in the Big 12 championship, not anybody else. And I'm not following ESPN here. That's who I put in my Big 12 title. When they did their final FPI mix-up before the college football season, there are schools like USC that are ahead of Clemson and Miami and Kansas State and SMU even, who I'll throw a bone to here. Schools like Auburn ahead of BYU. Missouri is ahead of Arizona State. And what that makes me want to do is ask the committee, hey, if you're going to value FPI, I need every individual member of this committee to explain to me what FPI is. Because the only thing that I can get out of it is, it's the algorithm that makes the teams that do more good or be good. And that's it. It's this fake thing where ESPN can wield its four letters and say, yeah, it's Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State. You're like, where did Alabama come from in there? Why are they third in the Where did Georgia come from? Ohio State just won the national championship. Penn State arguably has the best roster in college football. And then, the fact they have Tennessee in the top 10, Texas A&M and Ole Miss in the top 10, South Carolina up there, Florida. Do we forget how bad Florida got waxed by Miami? Do we no longer play full college football seasons? Is that not allowed in this sport? Do we forget how bad LSU looked at times last year? Ole Miss losing to Kentucky. Now things happen. BYU lost to a team that's not very good in Kansas, and Arizona State lost to Cincinnati last year. There are schools that are going to slip up to various opponents. And I understand that, but man, the fact that we're valuing a team like Ole Miss or Texas A&M or Tennessee in the top 10 right now, what it does is ultimately it gives the Big 12, the ACC, and even the Big 10 in this a worse shake at the end of the season, because now if you're ranked in the top 10 preseason, you can only go up from there. If you're ranked 48th, like maybe a Big 12 school like a Baylor, and you end up winning the Big 12 championship, like, oh, look at this team that came out of nowhere, and the metrics hate them, and they weren't even good preseason. No, right now it's all an even playing field, a big even slate. And if it's not an even slate, then the 48th best team, despite not playing a game, has an impossible task to beat the 5th best team, despite them not playing a game. And we could have from jump started with number 48 being better than number 5, but we'll never know because we won't move number 5 past number 48 and vice versa. 48 can't jump 5. Why? Because we put all of our eggs in a basket that doesn't exist, in a basket that is just preseason mumblings and, well, this guy goes to that school and that guy goes to that school and maybe they're going to be good. It's a bunch of maybes that add up to nothing. TJ, I don't see a use for the FPI outside of throwing it away.
What's interesting to me is that Fox hasn't come up with a counter. Right? Like, why am I the one thinking of this? But like, why has CBS or Fox or somebody else not come up with a counter to FPI that is maybe you could make a public one, right? Because the FPI formula is not perfectly known. Like QBR, like passer rating, that is known. Like you or not a QBR, but a QB rating. You can calculate it out to get to that 158.3 that is a perfect QB rating in the NFL. FPI is this privatized metric that can be moved and manipulated all behind the scenes. Proprietary, maybe I understand that idea. But yeah, you look at some of these moves. Tennessee jumping up with an unproven quarterback from Appalachian State. Florida, everybody on Florida's team is in a boot right now, including their starting quarterback. And I'm not just being a hater by saying that. I'm higher on the Gators than I've been in a long time for this season. But the only thing that's happened between the spring and now is that their top 2 receivers are in boots and their quarterback's hurt. And they're moving up in FPI. What are we doing with this?
Can I make this crazy? I love it. Yeah, I think BYU is my Big 12 title. I love them this season for their defensive prowess. And the second they named a true freshman their starting quarterback, ESPN said, shoot, dog, put him in the Big 12 championship, I guess. Like, no, ESPN, that's my job, not you. Please don't do that. It's crazy to me that so many of these teams that have had pretty bad injuries or pretty bad, ebbs and flows in the last couple months, ESPN said, I don't know, put them in the top 20. Why not? And even BYU is a part of that. Does this not feel like they're once again, ESPN, who has the major contract of the college football playoff games, that they're once again just kind of feeding themselves? This is not to name any politicians, but there are some politicians who you follow their stock trends because they got the friends in low places. That's what this feels like to me.
Yeah, moving the chess pieces around before you start the game, to put the other person's king out front is a wild move to make. And then you take your king off the board so you never be checkmated. That's what it feels like. That's probably a terrible analogy. Might clip it up, might not. But that's what it feels like ESPN is doing here. Is let me rearrange the board before we really get started. Moving Florida up and dropping Clemson well below them makes no sense at all to me. But hey, Clemson is not in the right conference yet. So it is what it is.
Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is exactly where I'm going this fall in the NFL season, namely to make sure that I can win some dough. That's what I like to do. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason heating up in college football isn't far behind either. Whether your eye is the big name quarterback or breakout running back, Prize Picks gets it in the game. Prize Picks is simple to play. Pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. I've used it for a few seasons now, and I love that it's just simple. The flex play option is a total game changer. Even one of your picks misses, you can still double your money. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off in lineups after you play your first $5 play. Prize Picks. Run your game with Prize Picks today. This show is also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is exactly where I go on August 26th. Officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl, this is your time. Take a flyer on the MVP race. Crown your champion in August, the Dallas Cowboys, right? Or parlay your division winner dark horses. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because FanDuel Futures Day is one day and one day only, August 26th. FanDuel, play your game with FanDuel today.
Well, West Virginia, first of all, who's starting for them? Just break the news for us now and put it out, because everything I'm reading is leaning one way, but still says it's open. And then once we have that answer, how effective will West Virginia be at that position this year?
Yeah, I think that we've pretty much determined that the quarterback competition is going to come down to Nico Marchiol and not Jalen Henderson. Now, can Jalen Henderson or Max Brown come in, or Khalil Wilkins find a spot here? Possibly. And the schedule allows for the Mountaineers, who open up with an FCS opponent, to go out, trot out Nico Marchiol, who has the most experience at the school, have him out there and beat up on Robert Morris for a quarter and a half, and then say, okay, what else do we have in the chamber here, while Robert Morris still has their first string out there. But the best part of this entire quarterback battle in the offseason is Rich Rodriguez being the gem of the Big 12. He's my new favorite coach in the Big 12 back in this conference. I guess he's back at West Virginia, and they weren't in the conference at the time, but he's in the league officially. He's in a press conference, and he's telling the media, he's like, man, I'll hold my play card in front of my face a little bit sometimes when I'm saying those naughty words, those bad words. And the paper he used as an example to hold in front of his face in the press conference was the depth chart. Just as clear as could be, he holds it up in front of his face, and all of America can see, Nico Marchiol is quarterback one. Now, there were some things that West Virginia is able to do to put out the fire, and he's still like, oh, we're in a quarterback battle, and there's competition, and that is. But most of us can agree now, Nico Marchiol is the guy. There will be some West Virginia fans who say, that's a bad move. That's a guy from last year. That's Neil Brown's guy. Are we going to be able to win with him? And those are very valid questions. By the way, anytime there's a change of the guard with the head coach, you want a new quarterback, you want a new running back, you want everything to be kind of brand new, so you can root for these things that don't have ties to the old head coach. And I would understand that because that's just kind of how we are in the football world. And without Garrett Green, Nico Marchiol gives you a lot. 19 career appearances. He has thrown 122 passes in college football at the Power 5 level. 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Those aren't sexy, but 285 on the ground, 3 touchdowns on the ground. He has 3 starts, and they had results. They found ways to win in those 3 games. He's got the respect of staying around. He's got the respect from a hard-nosed guy like Rich Rodriguez. And I can guarantee this. It is way harder to play college football for Rich Rodriguez than it is for Neil Brown. That's all that we've heard out of that camp is just how intense Rich Rod is. Now, he's looked across the room and told all the kids, hey, the transfer portal will go replace you if you're not going to put forth effort. And the running backs not being able to finish their workouts because they're so intense. This is what college football is supposed to be. If you are soft, it's not going to work. And the fact that you're redshirt junior, who is at A&M, your redshirt junior who's beating out a guy from A&M, formerly Jalen Henderson, who's a redshirt senior, that goes a long way to me. Rich Rod is not going to play Nico Marchiol just because he represents the guys in blue. He's going to play the best quarterback. And if right now Jalen Henderson or Max Brown is a redshirt junior from Florida, if both those guys pale in comparison to Nico Marchiol, it's not politics. It's not because Rich Rod just, we have to start the guy who's been here. It's more so because he's the best quarterback in that room. Will Jalen Henderson be used? I'm sure. Garrett Green is going to be an NFL wide receiver who has been very good in the fall for the NFL and during preseason. Could you see Jalen Henderson, Max Brown, even Nico Marchiol at times in a different position, a different spot, playing football in a way that is Pat White? You know, Pat White wasn't always supposed to be a quarterback of West Virginia. It was the idea that Rich Rod said, hey, you're going to be our QB, and he becomes this legend for the Mountaineers. That's what I think we'll see out of this quarterback battle in the end, is that Nico Marchiol will be the starter. You're going to see them used in multiple ways in multiple packages. This is going to be a very unique and creative football season for West Virginia.
How effective do you think he'll be? Like, is the quarterback battle, it's 2 sides of the coin, right? Is it, hey, the competition is really close, and so, all these guys are pushing each other up, or nobody's good, and so nobody separated themselves, right? Like 2 sides of one coin. There's maybe truth in the middle of all of that. But thoughts on his effectiveness this year, the support around him. You mentioned Green going to the NFL. What are your thoughts on what that will actually look like week 1 through 12 for West Virginia?
Yeah, Scotty Fox Jr. is a freshman who comes in and could be the guy in a couple of years. Khalil Wilkins, I mentioned earlier. The issue would be if Wilkins and Fox were competing for the starting quarterback job at West Virginia. If we said there's Marchiol, Wilkins, and Fox, you say, well, shoot, one's a redshirt junior, the other 2 are freshmen. And you tell me it's a quarterback battle? That doesn't breed this epic competition that the guys are really fighting day in and day out. What that tells me is Nico Marchiol is not ready. That isn't the situation we have. We have a redshirt junior facing Jalen Henderson, who again is a redshirt senior who played at Texas A&M and Fresno State, a blue chip coming out of high school, and then Max Brown, a redshirt junior out of Florida. Those are 2 SEC schools. Those are 2 23-year-old guys who played in the SEC against Nico Marchiol, who is the redshirt junior who's been playing at West Virginia. That shows me those guys, I told you, redshirt senior, we're running out of eligibility. If anybody's competing at the max to win, it's the guy who's old, the guy who's got to get it in right now. Otherwise, if he doesn't play like Spencer Sanders at Ole Miss, if he doesn't play, his career's done, goes out on a sour note. That's why I think there's a pure competition, because I know a guy like that is fighting tooth and nail. And if he's fighting tooth and nail and Nico Marchiol is still beating him out, that means Marchiol is doing the exact same thing and is probably the best option for West Virginia. This screams legitimate battle where everyone's getting better, as opposed to, we just can't figure it out. Similar to some battles we've seen at Oklahoma State here recently where it's been quarterback by committee. If you have 2 What is it, TJ? If you have 2 quarterbacks, none. If you have 3, you have -1. I think West Virginia has 5 right now, but only one of them is going to be the true guy, and that's where they'll get away with a pretty successful season. I mentioned Robert Morris, then the game against Ohio. They get Pitt at home, then they play Kansas and Utah, a couple teams that missed bowl games last year. That's not the toughest first 5. Kansas and Utah could be good, but again, 5-7 last season for both those squads. That first 5 games could set up West Virginia for an 8-4, 9-3 season.
How's the help around him? Quarterback's best friend is probably a run game and a defense, but offensively, what do you think about the line there protecting Nico or whomever it will be, but we'll assume Nico at this point, based on Drake C. told on Locked On Big 12 and College Football Addiction. Run game and offensive line for West Virginia this year.
The number 2 running back room in the conference, according to Pick 6 previews. So that's going to be massive. Now that their receiver room still has a lot to be desired. 13th in the country, and their offensive line is 13th in the conference, I should say, and their 15th ranked offensive line in the Big 12 per Pick 6 previews isn't great. It's their defense I have more questions over. The O-line and the D-line both are going to be on the bottom half of the Big 12, just based on we don't know a ton yet. They can be good. They had a couple guys that applied for early eligibility at West Virginia as well. They can be very strong. That's where I get a bit bent out of shape is the trenches. But I look at BYU last year, who shocked the conference, or Arizona State. Their O-lines, their D-lines were at that 10, 12, 14 spot in the preseason projections. Both those schools vied for Big 12 titles.
Drake, I appreciate you for hanging out. Give me a win total for West Virginia before we go real quick.
I'm going to go 8. I'm going to go 8 here. I think they lose some games where you say, what? You're an 8-win team. That was really stupid. How did you lose that? And they lose. They win some games. They lose some games where you go, that's the ultimate Big 12. Last year, we saw this a bit out of TCU, who would go in and beat a top team in the conference, and then they would lose TCU or Kansas either, and then they would lose, in the case of the Horned Frogs, to a Houston. You say, well, that was really stupid. West Virginia could be that for you this year. I think they can get to the 8-win threshold because I have so much faith in Rich Rodriguez in year number 1 back in his old office. But their schedule's brutal. They do have TCU. They have Houston on the road, who I see has improved. Arizona State is on the road. Texas Tech is in there. BYU is on the road. Utah, Kansas. It's going to be very, very hard. But 8 wins in this 2025 stretch, 8 wins is massive for that program if they get there.
Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they get more of your content, your work?
At Locked On Big 12 on Twitter, wherever you find your podcast, with Locked On Big 12 as well as YouTube, and at Drake C. Toll as well.
Appreciate it. I see my guy, Grape T News, in the comments. Thanks for hanging out today. Make sure you guys are subscribed. We will talk to you soon, about a week from now, and a couple of Big 12 games this weekend. Can't wait to see it. Thanks, Drake.